This is Madison Dean, and I will be discussing the counter story of Marcelo Sandoval. Marcelo in the Real World by Francisco X. Stork is about a 17-year-old boy, Marcelo, who is forced into the harsh reality of the real world by his father, Arturo. Marcelo Sandoval was comfortable with his lifestyle. He had a routine and a plan for his future that he looked forward to. That is, until one evening, Arturo tells Marcelo that he wants Marcelo to work in the mailroom at his law firm for the summer. The reason for that is because Marcelo has a form of autism that resembles Asperger's syndrome, and Arturo wants Marcelo to get experience functioning as a normal human being. By the end of the book, Marcelo surprises the law firm because the employees, including his father, thought that Marcelo would do no harm because he's on the spectrum. Through the institutions and people like Patterson's, the law firm, Jasmine, and Ixtal, Marcelo was able to resist the single story that people with autism are unintelligent. Looking at my picture, you will notice Marcelo standing on a windy pathway made up of piano keys at the very bottom of the page. The reason I chose piano keys is because, for one, music is one of Marcelo's special interests, and two, because throughout the book, whenever Marcelo has to make a decision, him or Jasmine will say, "The right note sounds right and the wrong note sounds wrong." At first, Marcelo's pathway is straight because at Patterson, he had it all figured out. But once Marcelo is introduced to the law firm, his decisions begin to get harder until he figures it all out again. On the bottom right of my picture, I drew a barn to represent Marcelo's school, Patterson. And above the barn, I quoted a sentence on page 55. Explanations about my condition are based on the assumption that there is something wrong with the way I am. And at Patterson, I have learned through the years that it is not helpful to view myself or the other kids there that way. Patterson is a school for disabled children, and Marcelo has been attending there since the first grade. I feel confident that if Marcelo had attended a public school, he would view himself much differently. Because of Patterson, he viewed himself as different, not ill or abnormal. To the left of Marcelo on my drawing, you'll see the quote, "I perceive reality just fine. Sometimes I perceive more of reality than others." So right from the beginning, the readers see that Marcelo does not think that he's inferior to others, and we have Patterson to thank for that. Without Patterson, Marcelo wouldn't have been able to strengthen his limitations, nor would he understand himself. Patterson taught Marcelo to push against the labels that society would try to put on him. On the left-hand side, I drew Arturo's law firm, and the quote next to it says, "And the answer is that he wanted me and everyone else to know that my son is..." The reason I chose this sentence is because of the preconceived notion that Arturo's coworkers had of Marcelo. While Patterson really fought against the single story, the employees at Sandoval and Holmes reproduced it. The assistants, secretaries, Stephen Holmes, Wendell, Arturo at times, and even Jasmine when she first meets Marcelo, thought that he wasn't smart. When Jasmine first meets him, she asks him if he can read, and Marcelo thinks she's joking and he doesn't get it. Some of the secretaries will make remarks like, "I thought you were slow," and Stephen Holmes calls Marcelo Gump. Now, this goes against my argument that the law firm resists the single story. At the beginning, it does reproduce the single story, but by the end of the book, the firm has to deal with the consequences of their narrow-mindedness, and that is how it produces a counter story for Marcelo. Above the law firm, I drew an envelope to represent Jasmine because, well, they meet and work together in the firm's mailroom. I felt that Jasmine should be included because she helps lead Marcelo to the discovery about his father, and she just lets him be himself without judging. Next, to the right side of the pathway above the barn, I drew Ixtal. I felt that Ixtal was a major point for my argument on the counterstory because seeing her picture in the trash is what forced Marcello to take a critical look at his father and the work his father does. Arturo was never expecting his son to be the one who caused his company to take a bad hit. It doesn't say this in the book, but I don't think anyone at the firm, besides Jasmine, thought that Marcello would be able to put two and two together because of his condition. Above my drawing of Ixtal, I quoted Marcello when he's talking to her about having ugly parts. He says, "Is not seeing any ugly in myself an ugly part?" This reinforces what I've previously said about Marcello not seeing himself as abnormal. To the left, above the law firm and the envelope, I wrote, "For all the pain I saw at Patterson, it is nothing compared to the pain that people inflict upon each other in the real world." By the end of the book, Marcello, who society viewed as unnormal, was able to help Ixtal, someone that society viewed as normal. The law firm helped develop Marcello into an even greater counterstory than he was in the beginning by exposing him to the true illnesses of society. At the end of the pathway is the image of the Vermont mountains with a horse standing below. This resembles a new plan for Marcello. He wants to move to Vermont with Jasmine and eventually become a nurse that works with children, and he hopes to also raise therapy horses for disabled kids on Amos's farm. Marcello just wants the world to be a better place, and he will try his hardest to make it that way. At the top of the mountains, I quoted Marcello when he's talking to Jasmine about his plan. He says, "Vermont will be the place where Marcello plays his counterpoint. Vermont will be the place where Marcello ignores society's standards and helps children like the way he was helped." So, one challenge I faced while making this project was making sure my pictures made sense and that my quotes kind of linked with my images. There were so many quotes that I wanted to use, so narrowing that down was difficult. One way it influenced my thinking was that I actually had to think about how society viewed disabled people. I grew up with a disabled sister, and over the years, I've learned that she can be independent. It's just different than what mine looks like. So I don't think that disabled people are unintelligent or less functional than I am, and I treat them with respect. All right, that's the end of my project.